vision, commitment, and courage to reform.
So we created a number of executive agencies, which I believe, and I can say, having left this thing for, was one of the most successful initiatives undertaken in the reform process.
But transformation isn't easy.
We found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a JLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is national policy.
There was political willingness, there was bipartisan support for going through with the reforms, there was societal support, a lot of societal sacrifices. People of Jamaica made a lot of sacrifices. And businesses, the private sector, everybody was engaged in this journey.
We want to continue to reform the public sector, to allow the public sector to provide its services to the Jamaican people, provide services to the private sector. And the idea is that those services must be more accessible. Those services must be more affordable. Those services must be faster. They must be more personable and comfortable for the citizen.
Watch Building a Better Public Sector, a 4-part docuseries right here on CVM, commencing April 5 and aired every Sunday in April at 3 p.m. Brought to you by the Transformation Implementation Unit.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Tonight, the price of weak governance. After public pressure, a meeting is finally held with the Jamaica Teachers Association. After the money has already been spent, the Public Accounts Committee moves to legally compel the attendance of the former and current leadership at the University Hospital of the West Indies. After contracts have already been awarded, the Auditor General reports that procurement documents for more than $500 million cannot be produced. After senior public posts have already been filled, questions emerge about whether some individuals even met the minimum qualifications required for those jobs. And that may be the real national crisis, that in Jamaica, too often, accountability arrives after the public outcry, after the failure, after the money is spent, after the contract is awarded, after the system breaks down, and after the taxpayers have already absorbed the cost. Tonight, we examine whether Jamaica's governance systems are structured to prevent failure, or whether they have become the systems that document failure after the damage is already done. And as billions of dollars in reconstruction financing begin moving through the state following Hurricane Melissa, the question becomes even more urgent. Can Jamaica move faster without becoming less accountable? Tonight, the price of weak governance. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story Prime. We're discussing tonight the price of weak governance, examining what happens when state systems become increasingly reactive instead of preventative, and what that costs the public. First, we begin with an overview with Akeem Oret.
It's not a story about one meeting, one audit, or one government entity. It is a story about a pattern in which public institutions repeatedly appear to respond to governance failure only after public pressure escalates, after money is spent, or after trust has already been damaged. There is a difference between governance that prevents failure and governance that documents failure after the fact. Tonight, that question begins with teachers. The Jamaica Teachers Association raised concerns. Frustration grew. Public pressure escalated. A meeting was proposed for Friday. The JTA pushed for faster engagement, and an 8:30 meeting was then scheduled this morning. Now that may sound like normal industrial negotiation, but the bigger question is whether state systems are becoming increasingly reactive instead of preventative. Do institutions move fastest only after public pressure intensifies? Because that same question now appears across multiple bodies. The Public Accounts Committee continues its examination of governance issues at the University Hospital of the West Indies, following findings from the Auditor General. The questions include procurement oversight, internal controls, or whether tax exemption structures indirectly facilitated private commercial benefit. But the UHWI is not the only case. The National Solid Waste Management Authority is now confronting questions about qualifications and institutional competence, and that is a different kind of governance failure, because when senior posts are occupied by individuals who do not meet required standards, the public does not just lose money. The public loses capacity, and in critical public agency, weak capacity becomes an operational risk. Then there are the precedents, JUTC and Petrojam. Different institutions, different controversies, but often the same underlying concerns: weak controls, oversight breakdowns, procurement questions, politically contentious appointments, and accountability arriving after the damage has already been done. The issue is not simply whether Jamaica has oversight bodies. It does. The country has the Auditor General, the Public Accounts Committee, the Integrity Commission, internal audits, parliamentary review, and the civil society watchdogs. The question is whether these systems are arriving early enough to prevent failure before taxpayers absorb the cost. Because the taxpayer often pays twice, first through the original failure, then through the investigation, the cleanup, the restructuring, the operational disruption, or the loss of public trust that follows. And this conversation is becoming even more urgent because Jamaica is now entering a period of significantly larger public spending, reconstruction financing, climate resilience projects, accelerated infrastructure development, major public-private investment activity, which is why the debate around the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority matters so much. Civil society groups are now warning that if execution accelerates without sufficient oversight, the country risks producing the very governance failures it is still trying to understand elsewhere. So tonight, the question is not whether Jamaica wants faster development. The question is whether Jamaica can build a faster state without building a less accountable one. Because weak governance is not abstract. It affects hospitals, schools, transportation, sanitation, reconstruction, investor confidence, and public trust in the state itself. And it creates a corrosive national message that standards are negotiable, oversight is delayed, competence is optional, and accountability is reactive instead of preventative. The real test of governance is not whether institutions can investigate failure after it happens. The real test is whether they can prevent a breakdown before the public pays the price. It's back to you, Jody.
Thanks so much, Akeem, with that overview of tonight's discussion. Well, we begin with a new development. That's because the Jamaica Teachers Association and the Ministry of Finance met this morning. JTA's President Mark Malava is now with us. President Malava, good evening, and thank you for being with us inside Lead Story Prime tonight.
Good evening, Jody. Good evening to your listeners, and I want to especially acknowledge the teachers across the length and breadth of the country.
An important acknowledgement given that you represented them this morning. We spoke yesterday. Yes. You spoke with us saying that you had a meeting scheduled for 8:30 today with the Ministry of Finance. Walk us through what happened. Was this a meeting that you believe truly showed substantive engagement, or are we still at preliminary conversation stage?
No, so we are way past preliminary conversations. We are in the nitty-gritty of the negotiations. That's pretty much where we are in terms of looking at the items of claims and treating with those. There were some legacy issues, particularly as related to the graduate allowance, which was already signed off on in 2023, and the Ministry of Finance had issued a letter which would have essentially required teachers with masters prior to 2022 to repay a substantial part of that master's allowance, which we believed ran contrary to the memorandum of understanding that was signed in 2023. We brought that matter up. We were very forthright with the Ministry of Finance on it, and based on those discussions, which occupied a substantial part of the negotiations today and discussions today, we are now awaiting a letter from the Ministry of Finance, and there's a commitment that letter will be forthcoming on Thursday. And once that letter comes, then we hope that the matter will be truly behind us.
What was the basis on which the ministry said that those with master's degrees before 2022 had to repay sums of money paid to them by the ministry?
Well, I would want to say they misinterpreted the memorandum of understanding. That's what I want to say. But I mean, the wording was very forthright in that memorandum of understanding, and it had major implications for our members who would have had masters. I don't think time would permit me to go into the history of this and to bring you up to speed as to how that matter evolved. But the reality is that we believe that we are now at a point where we can truly put that matter behind us, and we are awaiting a formal letter from the Ministry of Finance to indicate that.
The ministry had proposed meeting with you as the JTA on Friday of this week. The JTA pushed back and said when the ministry said they wanted to meet with you on Saturday, you said Monday because it was so important to your members. You eventually got to meet today. What does that timeline tell you about how urgently the government regarded this matter?
Well, we indicated to the government in no uncertain terms that given the high level of restiveness and agitation amongst our members with respect to the salary, it demanded urgency. We proposed that the meeting should be on Monday, but of course they indicated that Monday would be cabinet, and in all likelihood they would not be coming out of cabinet before a certain time. So there was a proposal for a meeting on Tuesday, and we had that meeting on Tuesday.
Did the teachers, though, feel that public escalation was necessary before their concerns received urgent attention? Because yesterday you said the timeline wasn't dependent on teachers saying that they were wearing black yesterday and today, but teachers now seem to be willing to amplify and escalate. Is that something that they believe is the reason that they're getting this sort of movement in a way that they feel that they haven't got in any reasonable time frame before this?
Well, here's where we are. We are in year 2 of a proposed 3-year contract. It is unprecedented. I can't recall a time in which something like this has happened, where you are in year 2 of a proposed 3-year contract and you have not yet, agreed to a contract. There is a high level of uncertainty in the system.
Hold on, Mark Malava. Let me take a quick break here inside Lead Story and hear now more about the continued restiveness of the teachers, as well as that high level of security now going into year 2 of this wage offer. Stay with us inside Lead Story Prime.
JA.org. Mind your business, JA with your government in line.
Use the MP tracker, if you watch how them a move, the account meter help them improve.
Take action.
Use the jump tool.
Track your MP cause they work for you. Mind your business, JA with Jump Online.
Let's monitor government at jumpja.org, funded by the European Union.
I'm me the stylist, no scammer, no style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ. Real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. You charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
We're continuing our discussion tonight about the price of weak governance, and starting off first with the Jamaica Teachers Association and the concerns of the teachers now that they are in year 2 of their wage offer, still unclear as to what happens next. This morning there was a meeting between the Jamaica Teachers Association and the Finance Ministry, and we have online with us President of the JTA, Mark Malava. President Malava, a moment ago you were talking to us about what it is that the teachers were experiencing, especially with this feeling of uncertainty. What specifically happened this morning inside the meeting that might have been able to put more concrete numbers on the table? Were there figures discussed, commitments made, or a timeline agreed to that might now move them from a place of being unsure to a little bit more sure? Mark Malava, unfortunately, it seems that you're muted as you speak with us tonight inside Lead Story, talking to us about the concerns of the teachers. Yes.
My apology. We did agree that we would continue negotiating on Friday. That meeting will start at 1 p.m. where we look at another key item on the list of claim. We have always maintained that there are some deal breakers for us, and we are treating with one of those deal breakers. For me, as JTA president, it is going to be fundamental if it is that we cannot hammer out a deal at this point in time. What I mean by this is that that aspect of the list of claim is very critical. It affects the widest cross section of our members, and it is either going to make or break the negotiations.
What's that deal breaker there? Is that hammering out a wage agreement in the second year so that you're able to do the things you need in upcoming negotiations?
No, well, the truth is, we're not going to put that out there because, we do negotiate behind closed doors, but the members are aware of what those key items are, what that key item is. We maintain that the teachers must be paid a salary in keeping with their value and their worth and their contribution to national development in this country. And here's a fact. Our teachers, and I've often said it, that the fight for better salaries and condition of service is not just a fight for increased salary. It is really a fight for social justice. Our teachers are amongst the lowest paid in the Caribbean, but when you look at the data in terms of performance, our teachers are leaps and bounds ahead of some of all of our Caribbean counterparts in the English-speaking Caribbean, so to speak. If we are bringing this value to national development and nation building, then we ought to be paid a salary in keeping with our value and our worth. There are various reports that are out there that would have assessed this, and we believe that those reports must be utilize to guide the negotiations.
You had phase one today. You said to us that you're expecting a letter on Thursday. You expect to go back to the negotiating table on Friday. But you have also said to the nation that the teachers are restive. If teachers are watching this program right now, they're talking to their colleagues, messaging them right now, seeing you represent them. What do you need to know about, what do they need to know about where things stand and where they might need to consider going next?
Well, certainly we intend to continue communicating with our members. I have said it earlier that they must continue to remain resolute. They must continue to remain on high alert. We will communicate to them as to the progress of the negotiations. We continue to go to these negotiations in good faith. And we are very wide-eyed in these negotiations. We are crunching the numbers. We're doing what we need to do as a negotiation team. The members can rest assured that we will put our best foot forward and we'll leave nothing, no stones unturned, so to speak. We continue to crave their prayers so that they can bear us up. We need clarity of thought as we go into these negotiations.
The most powerful leverage point that you might argue that the teachers have right now is taking some sort of action, especially as we are near exam season. Is that something that the membership would consider?
Well, if it is that it comes to that, then we will put the matter to our members. I believe that where we are now, we can continue to negotiate, and we continue to negotiate in good faith. If there is a breakdown, then we intend to bring the matter back to our members and for them to decide on the next course of action. We are a membership-driven organization, and we subject ourselves to the dictate of the members.
And as we close out this bit of conversation with you, thanks for staying with us a little bit longer, what would a preventative approach to this dispute have looked like so that you wouldn't have had to get to the table this late in the game to represent your members before the Ministry of Finance?
I think there's a need for more proactive action, more proactive leadership, and active engagement, and active communication. I think governments within the context of unionism tend to be way too reactive. We need to understand that it ought to be a partnership, but a partnership cannot be one-sided.
Well, we certainly look forward to hearing updates on what happens after you receive that letter on Thursday, and then you continue negotiations on Friday, hoping that collaborative approach that you hope to see is now evidenced in those discussions. Thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story. That was Mark Malava, president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, speaking to us inside Lead Story Prime following this morning's meeting with the Ministry of Finance. Now, that was one data point, that JTA meeting. This is what we're looking at tonight. What happens when governance fails? And it's not just one place, it's several. The University Hospital of the West Indies, the National Solid Waste Management Authority, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, and Petrojam. Now, we have lots of places you can go to, the Public Accounts Committee, the Auditor General, and the question that ties them all together: why does this pattern keep recurring? Well, in January, the Auditor General laid a report describing what is called a porous procurement environment at the University Hospital of the West Indies. The findings were stunning. The hospital could not provide procurement documentation for 51 contracts, totaling $521 million. That's $500 million. No requisitions, no tender documents, no piece of paper, no bid evaluations. In effect, $500 million moved through a system with major gaps in the paper trail. The report also raised questions about the University Hospital of the West Indies' tax-exempt status. The Auditor General found that goods, including office furniture and medical equipment, were allegedly imported for private companies through the hospital's duty-free arrangements, resulting in an estimated $23.1 million in unpaid import duties. Well, today, the conversation continued because the Public Accounts Committee escalated the matter. The PAC voted to legally compel the attendance of CEO Fitzgerald Mitchell, who has been on leave since the report emerged. Former CEO Kevin Allen has also been ordered to appear. Both of them, well, they failed to appear during today's sitting. Committee Chair Julian Robinson says the PAC has the authority under the Senate and Houses of Representatives Powers and Privileges Act to compel attendance as it seeks answers on UHWI's financial and operational issues.
I have consulted with the legal department of the Parliament in terms of how we proceed when someone who is invited does not appear. And I'm referring to the Senate and Houses of Representatives Powers and Privileges Act. And I'm going to read from Section 5. And I'm reading, quoting, either House or any standing committee may, subject to the provisions of Section 9 and Section 12, order any person to attend before such House or before such committee and to give evidence or to produce any paper, book, record, or document in the possession or under the control of such person.
That's where we are. That the PAC has asked people to come and they haven't shown up. And so you just heard a moment ago the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Julian Robinson, explaining that he has now the power to compel them to appear. The University Hospital of the West Indies, though, still remains under scrutiny. Your money is being spent, and the Public Accounts Committee is asking questions over billions in outstanding statutory obligations and ongoing governance concerns. CVM's reporter Clevin Black takes a look at what came out and why it's so important.
The University Hospital of the West Indies, UHWI, is facing growing scrutiny over approximately $17.5 billion in outstanding statutory obligations, excluding penalties and interest. For nearly a decade, the hospital lacked a valid tax compliance certificate, TCC, relying instead on temporary certificates or the status of other entities. Chairman of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, PAC, Julian Robinson, says the situation necessitates urgent intervention from the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Ministry of Finance, as the hospital cannot resolve these substantial debts independently.
What happened is that the question was asked when it was the last time we had a TCC and when was it valid too. So it was then we have a temporary TCC which ends on May the 6th. So we have had one now for 1 month, which ends on May the 6th. And the question was also asked, how long have you been using the University Hospital of the West Indies private wing, which made known to many as Tony Twait's wing? And we don't have the exact date for that as stated. However, it would have been after that, the one you mentioned, expired, that we have been using it until now.
Meanwhile, committee member Heather Miller-Bennett questioned whether any formal request was made to the hospital's board for Hurricane Melissa relief funding, with the acting chief executive officer, Eric Hossin, indicating there are no records to support such a request.
There are no records showing me that any such requests were made.
It's interesting that the CEO would say that, as I was made aware that there was a request sometime in November for Melissa relief funds into chair. So I'll allow the CEO to probably do his checks. Again, that brings to light the oversight of UHWI.
The issue deepened after Bennett referenced a document allegedly submitted in November 2025 outlining nearly $914 million in repairs and replacement costs linked to hurricane damage at the UHWI facility. However, acting CEO of the UHWI, Eric Hossin, maintains he has no record of the document being presented to the board and has committed to investigating the matter.
I have no record to say it came to the board, but I will investigate and let you know.
Please do, because I'm aware that I was made aware that this document was a document sent to the board and acknowledged.
I observe the member reading from
a script on a telephone. It means that whosoever sent it to her or the research that she would have done would have stated a title. Clearly, Mr. Chairman, something is not right. Tell us, let us know exactly where you get it from. It's not only the CEO who wants to do research.
Kevin Black reporting for CVM News.
Thanks so much, Kevin. You couldn't go to work without the documentation, and you couldn't operate your business without a tax compliance certificate. But government funds, our taxpayer funds, now ask these questions. We'll take a break and return inside Lead Story Prime.
Your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Every dream conquered is another dream game. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are mash up the night. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights on.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yeah. Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
We're inside Lead Story Prime, and tonight we're discussing the price of weak governance. And those governance and accountability mechanisms matter to you. And we're watching this play out all at once in one single week. Because at the National Solid Waste Management Authority, an internal audit covering 2008 to 2026, 18 years, found that several directors occupy posts for which they do not hold the required qualifications. One post requiring a master's degree, well, that's filled by an individual with no documented academic qualifications. Salary, $13 million a year. Another post requiring a postgraduate degree is being filled by someone holding 3 CSEC subjects. Those are the CXC subjects often you would take at 5th form. You don't know which 3. Salary, $9.3 million a year. The National Solid Waste Management Authority's executive director has called these findings draft and disputed. His position: his managers have the requisite skills even if they do not hold the formal degrees the job descriptions require. And that response itself is a governance question. Because in a public institution, the qualification requirement is not a suggestion. It's there for a reason. It's a standard. The public was promised. You have certain information, you know certain things, you will use these tools to the benefit of Jamaica. and concerns are growing over governance at the National Solid Waste Management Authority as a result. We're now watching and seeing what the public has been talking about, and one person that has responded on this is political commentator Lloyd B. Smith. He had this to say.
From all indications, it would appear that this has been par for the course. In other words, over these many decades in the civil service, there has been the tendency to employ persons more so based on their particular affiliations or connections rather than dealing specifically with the requirements for the job in terms of qualifications and experience.
And while we here at Lead Story don't know what qualifications they might have that might be similar to allow for them to practice in these positions or to take them to the benefit of the people of Jamaica, and we don't know what else is going on, it is concerning that each of these positions would have had a raft of requirements, and every Jamaica who might have been able to apply, had only they known that they would have been waived, now is looking on. Now, we are taking a look and seeing continued reports about governance failures, and we're looking tonight at weak governance here in Jamaica. And all of this is against the backdrop of a big spend coming up, a big push that we've been told is on the horizon, with Jamaica now entering a period of significant public spending. Reconstruction financing, resilience projects, those will be things that we'll be certainly looking at. And 28 civil society organizations are asking Parliament to pause, asking what happens if it doesn't at a time like this. We are joined inside Lead Story by Judith Wedderburn, civil society advocate, as well as someone who will be speaking to us this evening about gender development practitioner, civil society advocacy, and why she decided to be part of the pushback that has now been raised. Judith Wedderburn, thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story Prime.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're watching a situation, Judith Wedderburn, where governance is under question. The government would have indicated that we have extraordinary gains that we should absolutely credit, that has allowed for us to have macroeconomic stability. But internally inside the country, 28 civil society organizations have now called for a pause on an important piece of legislation, the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority legislation, a bill that was debated in Parliament today. What specifically in the bill drafted has triggered this level of concern, Judith Wedderburn?
Well, as you have just said, Julian, it is a piece that we have achieved a fair amount of progress in certain areas. To be now confronted with a piece of draft legislation, it certainly raises more questions than answers. My concern, there is no provision I've seen for guarantee that the consultation that should take place across the entire country, not just civil society organizations, community groups, members of the private sector across Jamaica, those consultations need to take place so that everyone has an input into the decisions that are made, especially because it's going to involve a spend of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. It seems to me that we cannot afford to make any mistakes on this one and end up with a piece of legislation that provides very little accountability and oversight, certainly not adequate to meet the demand and the expenditures of money, which if I remember correctly, is going to be a loan. And win, lose or draw, the country will have to pay back the loan. Therefore, we must be concerned about how the resources are spent. Is there enough accountability on who gets which job? The private sector and the community groups and civil society have a right to know.
Well, there has been pushback on this, Judith Wedderburn. Individuals saying none of you in civil society have been elected by the people of Jamaica. It's not your job to govern. And if the government is looking at the importance of reconstruction and saying that after Hurricane Melissa, the most destructive hurricane to ever make landfall in the Atlantic has so devastated part of our country that reconstruction cannot wait. You need to trust them. You must understand the pressures that they're facing and the immediacy with which this piece of legislation must be put in place. Civil society's position, however, has been that accountability can't be an afterthought. Is there a middle version of this legislation that satisfies both?
Well, perhaps there can be a middle version, but to arrive at a middle version that is really middle version, you need to have a consultation. And we've had a week, supposedly a week, to make decisions about something as important as this.
But why do you need to have the conversation, Judith Wedderburn? You, along with 27 other organizations and individuals, signed a document led by the Jamaica Environment Trust and Jamaicans for Justice asking for continued discussions around NARA. NARA was initially laid in March, relayed this month. What in this new piece of legislation still doesn't satisfy you, given that we already have frameworks in place? The Public Accounts Committee, after the fact, the Auditor General to be able to help us, real-time audits that we can have in ministries, departments and agencies. We have structures set up. What in them don't you trust as we look at this NARA legislation?
Please do not. Certainly, we don't distrust the structures are in place, but it seems to us that how the legislation is being proposed, it will be able to sidestep those structures and go straight to the person who is the main designer of NARA. It's a danger of sidestepping those same structures, as you have said, has served us well. Public Health communities on the various structures. Why sidestep them?
That is a dangerous sidestepping that would happen. Tonight we're looking at the price of weak governance, and the program has examined recurring governance failures at the University Hospital of the West Indies. That's real time. NSWMA, that's real time. JUTC, that's legacy. We had that problem there already, and that Petrojam there, all under existing oversight systems. What's civil society's argument for why NARA would be different, or why it wouldn't be, given that we are right now discussing failures in some of these institutions?
Well, I would suggest that failures have happened in the past, yes, but certainly we must be inclined to make it not happen again. Those failures.
As the legislation was debated in Parliament today, is there anything that you have heard so far or that your colleagues have mentioned that makes them feel that there is some movement towards the direction that you want for greater accountability and oversight?
Well, is the truth be told, I was not able to listen to the deliberations in Parliament today. So I can't help you with that question, but I would like to hope that good sense prevails and that more time will be given for the appropriate consultations to take place.
Important to have those conversations, though, and that's what's being asked for by the 28 signatories to that document. Correct. Judith Wedderburn, you're one of them. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight inside Lead Story Prime.
Thank you so much. Bye.
We'll continue having this conversation next as we discuss the price of weak governance here inside Lead Story Prime.
I'm me the stylist, no scam and not style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ. Real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. No charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story Prime as we continue to look at the price of weak governance. Well, Jamaica is now entering a period of significantly larger public spending, and we have worked on our framework so much to be able to get stronger governance. But we're looking at big money spends, reconstruction financing, climate resilience projects, accelerated infrastructure development. The National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA, is a legislative framework through which much of that money will move. And the closing debate on the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority today was met with fiery exchanges and constant interjections as opposition members demanded transparency and stronger oversight, while government members, including the Health Minister, issued charge refutations in support of the bill designed to fast-track post-Melissa infrastructure projects. Let's take a listen.
With themselves. They themselves have spoken about the inefficiencies of the current bureaucracy and the need for change. The very opposition leader has spent time talking about it. Is he now arguing that we should engage the very same process to deal with people who have emergencies? It cannot be, Madam Speaker. It cannot be. And indeed, Madam Speaker, history.
I rise on a point of order, Madam Speaker. The member is misleading the House. It has never been my position, or indeed anybody on this side's position, that we shouldn't have more efficiency, a quicker procedure, and faster resolution of the issues. We're all in favor of that. The fact is that the current bureaucracy and the way the government is interfacing with it has led to all sorts of problems, and which need to be addressed structurally. What we are complaining about is a lack of accountability, a lack of transparency, and a lack of oversight. And a lack of oversight. And a lack of oversight. So I'm not suggesting
opposition. No, that's okay. It's okay. Opposition leader. I've turned off all mics. Opposition leader, Prime Minister is making a point of order on your point of order.
We should be careful that we do not allow perfection to be the enemy of good. We should accept where suggestions can strengthen the bill. We should make those suggestions in all sincerity, bearing in mind that the primary goal is to address the plight of the Jamaican people who have suffered over the last number of months.
And so we've now taken a look at what took place in Parliament only a few moments ago. But reconstruction is not just a policy conversation. It's also an industry conversation. $6.7 billion US secured for Jamaica's recovery will eventually become contracts, procurement processes, tenders, build programs, and the companies that execute them will work. Jamaican builders, contractors, master builders have direct and material interest in whether the NARA framework is transparent, accountable, and fair. Tonight's final guest is one of those 28 civil society voices that has said, let's take a look at this piece of legislation currently drafted. And so we have with us tonight, inside Lead Story, President of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, Richard Mullings. Richard Mullings, thanks so much for joining us inside Lead Story Prime.
Hi, good night. Thank you for having me.
Your association is one of those who has said, hi, from our perspective, let's take a look at what it is that NARA is going to be doing. It's pulling in a lot of resources. We work with these resources all the time. We think that there is some feedback that we could give. What is it that you see in the current legislation after having been relayed in April that your association says we could do better at?
Okay. Well, firstly, I have to reiterate the point that we make every time, which is that the Master Builders Association wants the NARA legislation to succeed. We think it's critical for the reconstruction effort, and we think it's critical to help our fellow citizens recover resiliently from the disaster of Hurricane Melissa. In our review of the bill, we had some concerns which we did relate publicly, and we also related in a position paper which we sent to both sides of Parliament, both sides of the House, with principal issues on transparency, especially in the procurement process, and local participation. How will locals be engaged? How will we ensure that not only do we recover infrastructure and physical rebuilding, but how do we build our people? How do we develop the people who are part of the society, who have to occupy, maintain, and operate that infrastructure that we're about to invest heavily in?
It's so important that you told us that you haven't just made public utterances about it, you've done the work. You said, all right, we're sending in now a position paper indicating our concerns. But tonight, inside Lead Story Prime, we've examined procurement failures, things that don't work. And we've looked at University Hospital of the West Indies, 51 contracts, $521 million, no paper trail. JUTC repeatedly flagged for procurement after the fact, buying first, writing the contract later. As someone whose members participate in public procurement, how common is that experience that things don't work the way they are on paper, and what does that do to the industry?
Unfortunately, it's more than common. It is more the norm than the exception. There's deep issues with our procurement system, even though we have good technology and we've made steps since the past. There's still issues related to how those procurement processes are managed by the public sector. And we still get really extended delays, and it is very painful and almost prejudicial against our members, where we've seen people fall out or just not willing to participate in public sector construction over time. And companies, it really has unfortunately narrowed competition, where it's difficult for the average company or the small and medium enterprise to compete effectively when we have delayed procurement, and that leads to follow-on issues with contract delivery. When you think about jobs tendered in 1 year, but tasked with implementation 2-3 years later, you can see how the changes in price over that time and other issues would arise that really end up giving a poor look to the industry and overall, and it's especially on our local contractors who are often just the last buck in an issue. We face it after the problems with the scope and after issues with the budget.
As we close this conversation with you, what would you want to say to parliamentarians as they continue to debate this piece of legislation about how important it is to your members that they get it right?
I would say it's not just the parliamentarians, but I would say this to the public. After the hurricane, when I'd settled my family, the first call I made as the president of the Master Builders was to the National Works Agency to ask what assistance can local contractors offer to help. And you'd find that the next day, my members, contractors are volunteering equipment to help roads, myself, my company included, was in Black River helping to clear roads. Who is going to be there in the next disaster if we don't ensure that we build the people who belong in this country, who are part of this country, were born in this country? We have to build up our local capacity to be ready for the next disaster. We have to build up our local skill set. And anything that happens on the narrow must include building locals so that we're ready and resilient for the future.
Ready and resilient for the future. That's the word from Richard Mullings, president of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica. Thank you so much for joining us inside.
Thank you for having me.
An important conversation there, but at the end, tonight's program examined 3 moments. A meeting between the JT and the Finance Ministry, called only after frustration became public. A PAC hearing into the University Hospital of the West Indies, one chapter in a longer story that runs through the NSWMA, the JUTC and Petrojam. And a piece of legislation, the NARA Bill, now before Parliament, with 28 civil society organizations asking for a pause. These are all connected. They're 3 expressions of the same national question. Does Jamaica build accountability in, or does Jamaica wait until the damage is done and then investigate it? The Auditor General can find the problem after the fact, the PAC can review it after the fact, the Parliament can debate it before, civil society can flag it before. But none of that changes the outcome if the system's default position is reaction instead of prevention. Jamaica's taxpayers don't need more documentation of failure. They need governance systems that intervene before the money is spent, before the appointment is made, before the exemption is extended, and before the trust is broken. The institutions exist, the laws exist. The question that remains is whether the will to use them preventatively rather than retrospectively also exists. That is the story. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching Lead Story Prime. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe. Up next, Fan Central.
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV. Brought to you by some things are perfect from the start. Smirnoff.
Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
Tonight on Small Biz, Big Dreams, we meet a nail stylist with professional and unique designs that will make you look neat and refined. This is Small Biz, Big Dreams.
For over 15 years, Donya Marie McFarlane has been building her brand